morning, everybody. Welcome to Solidarity Live. We are coming to you the day after the inauguration of the 46th president, President Joe Biden. I don't think he was a lot of our first pick, but goodness, does it feel good to say no more Donald Trump. And a little surreal, honestly. It's been a very, very strange 4 years. Alex, hi. Good morning. How are you?
Better. And I have to just say that it feels better to not have Donald Trump in the White House. It feels better to not have Stephen Miller in the White House and
Yes.
all of those criminals and white supremacists and just evil people who were there and empowered by Trump. And it's also really, really nice to just see him leave as a disgrace, just like little tiny disgraced man with no power. And his kids are crying, and each one of their tears brought a smile to my face because they're terrible people.
All right, to be clear, the kids in question are like 35 to make the sentence a little bit better.
Ivanka Trump, Donald Jr., and that other one. Their tears were really fine by me because they're crying not over something. They're literally crying because the gravy train has stopped and they can't perpetrate the harm on the world that they could when they. Like, why was Ivanka Trump ever in government doing anything? Her one qualification is that she was the daughter of this idiot in the White House. So yes, I take joy in seeing them understand that they have no power now. And I'm also loving the knife fight in the Republican Party because, you know, they created this. So I have a bunch of feelings, Jocelyn, and I'm hoping that that's what we can focus on today is feelings and strategy about what we've been through and try to digest it. And then also now, what are we going to do? And so I thought the perfect person to bring on to help us with this conversation, my business partner and great friend, Kymone Freeman, who is the co-founder of We Act Radio. He's the reason We Act Radio exists. And Kymone, you've been at the forefront of so many of the struggles that we're talking about, but also I think it's super important that you've been at the forefront as basically a target of this administration and these criminals that I think are, you know, sulking out of town as you know, somebody who fights for the African-American community, as somebody who stands up loudly against the carceral state and the police state. What are you feeling today? And I brought it to a dark place. If you want to share your joy first, even if it's sort of like mine, joy at bad people getting their comeuppance. Welcome to the show, Kymone. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me. And I'm not one of the people that's doing cartwheels about this. We've been down this happy road before when we had Barack Obama. It was celebratory, but we realized it was more symbolism over substance. And so I actually, in watching the inauguration, enjoyed the young lady's poem more than I have enjoyment for the incoming administration. You can say that you have relief that Trump is gone, but from my opinion, I appreciated that Trump exposed everything that America was about underneath the surface. This was what America was. People are kidding themselves and think that Trump created white supremacists, that Trump created corruption, that Trump created the inequities, that Trump created America's disdain for the poor, people of color, and its refusal to provide health care for everybody. All these issues were there. We were not ready to address any of the issues that came up in this pandemic. in this crisis. And I think that when I did my interview with, was it France 24, I talked about the fact that, white supremacy has been here for 500 years. And the fact that it's still here means that there's an unwillingness to talk about it and to address it openly. And as you know, Alex, I've been saying for years, there's a PBS report, PBS did a segment on an FBI report in 2006 that said that law enforcement has been, quote unquote, infiltrated by white supremacists. And when we say law enforcement, we're talking about all levels of law enforcement. We're talking about the cops on the street. We're talking about the prosecutors in the courts, the judges, and so forth and so on. And that's why we have the largest prison system in the entire world, and it's filled with Black and brown people. But this was there before Trump. Trump just made it acceptable and gave attention to these issues. And let's not let the media off the hook. The media enabled Trump. The media empowered Trump. The media is just as responsible for that the attempted coup in the Capitol as Trump himself. And we're not talking about that, because then we start getting to real issues on how the six corporations control most of what we see here and read and influence people's thoughts and actions. I always say this to my students in my media arts training program with Marion Barry Summer Youth Employment Kids. And I say, well, how many times have you repeated the words to a song you know you didn't like? And they were, okay, why would you repeat the words to a song you know you didn't like? Because you kept hearing it over and over. And so therein lies the power of the media, not only of our thoughts, but also of our actions. And I think that the media, who's still in place, is just as culpable of all the evils that Trump is guilty of.
Yeah. And I mean, seriously, Kymone, I really love talking to you as always. And I appreciate you for not really being distracted. I think it was kind of disturbing for me yesterday to talk to people. And again, I really do think we should take joy wherever we can find it, whether it's at like a protest that goes really well or having small political victories. I think that's important. But yesterday I was really disturbed by the number of people I heard say things like, oh, I'm so excited to not care about politics anymore. I heard that so many times yesterday. I was like, y'all know this isn't, I mean, Black Lives Matter started as a movement under the Obama administration. And,
exactly.
I mean, this isn't new. None of this is new. And
I think we'll throw in that I think we're in a better place than with Obama. If you remember back to Obama, when he came into office, the movement on the outside, we were facing down Bush, who, is the worst. And Kymone and I have been organizing against the Iraq War on all sorts of things. And like really, there was this huge demobilization of the people power, right? Everyone was like, yes, we did it. We beat Bush. We got Obama. Everything's going to be fine. And like savvy people, I was younger, so I didn't feel, I listened to people, but I also was a leader at the time. And I'm the first one to admit, we had, Kymone can attest, every year on World AIDS Day, we would get dozens of people arrested in front of the Bush White House, and the dozens of people and pushing on bad policy, getting, we got free condom distribution in Washington, D.C. through just activist power. And the first Obama World AIDS Day, we didn't have a protest. We actually all wore these hats that said hope. And the O was the red ribbon for HIV/AIDS, but we literally stopped pushing. And you know what? On balance, George W. Bush was better on international HIV policy than Barack Obama was.
We had Dr. Paul Farmer said that when he was on here. The one good thing that George W. Bush did is he was very serious about AIDS solidarity.
But what it was not like, I mean, he was terrible. I give him no credit. But we pushed, and the activists pushed, and the activists forced this to happen. And I'll give like some really horrible people. It was when Samaritan's Purse and some other right-wing evangelicals came on board. That's when we saw a huge policy shift on HIV/AIDS. But what I'm actually seeing now, and I want to throw it to you, Kymone, as a question, is I don't feel as much of what you were saying, Jocelyn, today as I did with Obama. I don't feel a lot of people are like, yeah, Joe Biden's got it. I feel like everybody's like, we defeated Trump, but the work has just started, and we are not going to take our foot off the gas at all. I know that's what I'm doing, and what Jocelyn's doing, and Kymone, what you're doing. But you think, and I stole Jocelyn, I stole your question. Sorry. Do you think?
Okay.
You think that's right, Kymone? You can steal mine back. You get 2 now.
I'm gonna steal all your questions.
All of them.
Well, you know, our studio that's fashioned after Do the Right Thing, the studio and Do the Right Thing, and I'm impersonating Samuel Jackson. It sits on the radical side of Martin Luther King Avenue. So whenever I get into these positions and opportunities to speak to a wider audience, I always like to quote the radical Martin Luther King. If I may, I want to share 2 here. One is the evils of capitalism are as real as the evils of militarism and the evils of racism. That is something that's still here in America, in the post-Trump America. And he says that we as a nation must undergo a radical revolution of values. We must rapidly begin to shift from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society, where machines and computers, profit motives, and property rights are considered more important than people. The giant triplets of racism, materialism, and militarism are incapable of being conquered. True compassion is more than flinging a coin to a beggar. It's a haphazard and superficial. It comes to see that an edifice that produces beggars needs restructuring. And he said, a true revolution of values will soon look uneasily on the glaring contrast of poverty and wealth. A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death. I think this crisis has put us in a situation where they're going to have to address these inequities, but we still see an unwillingness to do so. The Biden administration, it doesn't support a Green New Deal. It doesn't support universal health care. It doesn't support universal basic income. And universal basic income is something Martin Luther King also supported. But the system is breaking down. And one of my favorite writers, Chinwe Achebe, I believe his name, Things Fall Apart. That's where we are right now. The empire is like London Bridge falling down. And we need to acknowledge that America is not a country. It is, in fact, an empire. And all empires fall. And we have now seen that America is in this post-height America. You know, I would say that they was at their apex probably in the 50s and 60s. And Reagan tried to keep it going with his Reaganomics. But I think that we are past our prime in America, and we need to start embracing the rough roads ahead that we're going to have to address. We're all familiar with Martin Luther King's last speech, but oftentimes we're not as familiar with his next to his last speech. His next to last speech was delivered March 31st, 1968, right here in Washington, D.C. It was entitled Remaining Awake During a Great Revolution. He was saying that people oftentimes live in great periods of social change, and they fail to adopt the new ideas, the new attitudes, the new way of thinking, the new patterns that the new situation calls for. They end up sleeping through a revolution. So while we can rest assured that Biden is certainly less evil than Trump, there's still evils that need to be addressed. And when asked what was the difference in policing between Biden and Trump, Biden says, well, Trump wants to shoot him in the chest. I say, well, we train the police to shoot him in the leg. And for people in Washington, D.C., that kind of rang very inauthentic, because we have memories of the former team that they said they would never change the name, put that in all caps, who is now called the Washington team. Sean Taylor, number 21, was shot in the leg and died. So shooting in the chest, shooting in the leg is not much of a difference when you're still getting shot and potentially dying from that. So what is the real difference that we're talking about? What's the substantive differences that we're talking about, because this crisis has created opportunities where it's inevitable. Everything that was politically impossible is now politically inevitable. But when Obama was here, we were told we had to push him. Well, I submit to you now that Biden is here, which many people are looking at as Obama Part 2. He's going to have to be drugged, kicking and screaming. How do we make the government reflective of the will of the people? The vast majority of the will of the people support expanding Social Security. The vast majority of people support healthcare for all. The vast majority of people is against wars. The vast majority of people would support a Green New Deal. But all of these things are not embraced by the administration, or at least his track record on all these things doesn't embrace them. So where do we go from here to make the system reflect the will of the people?
Well, okay, where do we start? I mean, honestly, like, so if you were talking to someone, how do you tell people to get involved?
Were you asking me?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the first thing I would do, I would say that they would first have to get angry. You know, Alex, what's the name of that film we love? I'm mad as hell and I'm taking it no more.
Broadcast.
No.
Network.
Okay.
Network. I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. But Google that. First of all, I wanted to also say Achebe's Things Fall Apart. We should just highlight the book that Kymone said. It's very short and everyone should read it. And it's not about now, but it might as well be. And then Network, you have to watch that whole, the Things Fall Apart was written in the 60s, right? Pretty sure.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. 60 or 70s.
60 or 70, late 60s, early 70s. Network is a little bit later in the 70s, but literally both of these things could be the speech in Network is exactly about right now. So it actually is really interesting to me. And, you know, I don't try to be trite using organizing phrases, but like the struggle continues is something that I return to all the time. That, you know, the same forces that were being talked about 40, 50 years ago are still here, and we're still fighting them. But I actually I think we're doing better now than we were at the beginning of Obama, because we can ask you, what would you say to, you know, tell people get angry and then get organized? Or
right.
Sorry, I was taking your answer because I knew where you're going. So keep going. First, you get angry.
That's not how interviews work, Alex.
Yeah. First, you get angry, and then you have to do something. And I think that we don't have enough of that. But whenever I have people who are opposing something, I try to, you know, find common ground. And one of the things I've found to get people upset is I tell them that you should be pissed off every time you pay your electric bill. How so? Because Nikola Tesla, who at the turn of the century, and one of my favorite actors, Ethan Hawke, portrayed him in an independent film. Everyone should go check that out. He created a tower that was going to deliver energy worldwide for free, much like we have Wi-Fi right now. They were able to emanate energy and distribute it through the same means. And once J.P. Morgan realized that they couldn't commodify and monetize that energy, they tore it down and destroyed his career. And Thomas Edison even went so far as to refuse to accept a Nobel Peace Prize because he was going to have to share it with Nikola Tesla. I'm saying it to say this: that is capitalism. Capitalism is refusing to do what is beneficial to all the people because it's not profitable. And until we address that very central idea, nothing is going to change. Capitalism is the reason why they're against the Green New Deal. Capitalism is the reason why we don't have universal health care. Capitalism is why they want to privatize Social Security. And until we address that, we're going to be spinning our wheels in the mud. Capitalism is the reason why we have endless wars. And the one thing I can say about Trump is that he's one of the few presidents that did not start a war. His war
I don't give him that. I don't give him that.
I'm just saying he did assassinate people.
I don't give him that at all. His
What war
bona
did he
fides.
start? His war was domestic. That's his war. His war was not outside America. His
But
war was in America.
He gave I think the genocide in Yemen, like definitely Obama's, but definitely Donald Trump's as well, because he went over to Saudi Arabia.
If that's the case, then Clinton did the same in Rwanda.
I have to think about what you mean there, but
I mean, I would agree with that, Kymone. Heck yes. I'm trying to curse less. Hey, but yes, I agree.
In
Literally
action
left
in Rwanda.
Yeah, I mean, we left Rwandans to just get slaughtered.
But we also, there's no but there. I'm just saying I don't give Trump any peace at all, because he's as militaristic as the most bloodthirsty war pigs. He just didn't, he's such a bumbling idiot that he couldn't figure out how to start a war with Iran, even though he was trying as hard as possible.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness.
Yeah, in partnership with Saudi Arabia and Israel. Anyways, that I like having disagreements, because otherwise we just agree in a circle. I give Donald Trump 0 points for not being a war pig. He was just a bad war pig. But your main point being that a U.S. foreign policy of imperialism is a bipartisan policy.
Exactly.
And I mean, like, some of the first things that Biden is going to do are going to be just super bad foreign policy
Biden
stuff.
supported going to Iraq. Clinton supported going to Iraq.
Yeah.
So,
my point is a little bit that, not a little bit, it's that so Biden is Biden, but there's a whole movement now that is more powerful than ever before, more decentralized, and Biden is just one person. We have champions in the House and in the Senate now, Budget Committee Chairman Bernard Sanders, for example.
Oh, I've heard of him. Yes.
He's sitting on the Budget Committee. We got the Squad and, all of them.
And look,
Squad members.
I don't want to minimize, because I know that I was saying, I don't want to minimize that, because I think you're right. We've had so many people on this show over the past year, particularly talking about how this vast infrastructure, this vast organizing infrastructure that we have really built under the Trump administration isn't going to cycle down on its own. People are too engaged now, which is great and which is really important. We just need to keep the pressure on.
what other weapons do we have in our arsenal other than the Squad and Bernie Sanders to wrestle control from the oligarchs? Because even President Jimmy Carter says that America is not a democracy; it's an oligarchy with unlimited political bribery. And with Citizens United, it pretty much paved the way for that. How do we begin to exercise that people power? We get people riled up. We want them to do something, and then
I think a big part of it is what you started with, or started on. The only benefit, the only thing that I'll say about Donald Trump, the only good thing, is that I don't know, we've been doing this for a long time. For all of my activist sort of years, the main thing I had to deal with was nice liberal people being like, oh, it's not that bad. Mm-hmm. You say that they're fascists. You say that people are dying like flies from preventable diseases, and that pharma is run by sociopaths who make profit by killing people. But it can't be that bad. It's actually this, it's recognizable. It's like most people are good, and so they don't believe how bad people are, right? And they actually think that truth tellers are lying. And, comfortable white suburbanites listen to you, Kymone, talk about police brutality on the Black community, and they're like, oh, I think you're probably overreacting, right? Like that concept where people just don't want to face how bad things are. Trump just ripped that bandage right off.
Absolutely.
The scales fell from people's eyes, because they're like, whoa, this is really bad. And then it ends with I was told for 4 years, like, oh, he's not a fascist, he's not a Nazi, he's not a this, he's not.
They told you that
all the time, and I'm like, oh, you're overreacting. It's the norms, and I'm like, he's burning the norms in a bonfire like the Nazis burned books. Our democracy is fragile, and everything sort of came to a head when there was a coup attempt. Right?
Has anyone apologized to you yet?
That's what I was talking about. Remember when I was saying that he's a Nazi, he's a fascist?
No,
it's undeniable. That part is what I would say he gave us.
I think that is probably weird for the three of us because we've all been incredibly radical for I don't know how many years. A long time, though. A long time. And it is interesting and good, very good to see that catch on in America. These things that used to be far left sentiments are now mainstream public opinions. But the point that Kymone is making, and it's so true, how do we bridge what people want with the oligarchic government that we have right now? And it's a very real question. We have, at this point, a government and a public that are pretty divorced from each other. And that's not a democracy. That is by definition not a democracy. When the will of the people isn't reflected by anyone governing, that's a problem.
And so we have popular movement ability that we didn't have even at the beginning of the Obama era. I mean, not to bring it back to We've Got People, but if you've read Ryan Grimm's book, like, it's about personality, right? So AOC is a really important figure in it, but it's actually a story about distributed organizing. It's about the fact, Kymone, that you and I built a radio station. How hard can it be? Turns out it's pretty hard, but we did it. We have a TV studio. We disseminate information out. We need more. And we have tools to actually amplify our activism that were not in people's toolbox just even short time ago. And then, I mean, like, I don't like to overdo it, but it's almost hard to overdo it. You had what happened when Bernie Sanders ran for president the first time. The media wanted to pretend that the country was like this one, right? They painted it this one way, like, oh no, people want milquetoast things, and they want the banks to have as much access to capital as possible, and they wanted health insurance. And Bernie Sanders came out and was just like, no, healthcare for all the obvious things. And the surge of excitement from young people, especially, was undeniable. And the media lost control of that part of the narrative, right? That the country doesn't want good things, that the country wants, to keep concentrated capital in the hands of the few. We have not won, but we are winning in some of these fights. And the reason we have We Act Radio is because it's about changing the story, about how the narrative is. And where I think we are is a time to actually flex and be like, you couldn't have beaten Trump without us. We beat Trump. Joe Biden didn't actually beat Trump. We beat Trump. We beat Trump when he tried to get rid of Obamacare. Medicare for all supporters beat that we beat Trump care. We're the ones who beat the fascists. And the moderates have to take notice that they're not the majority. And I also will say that the progressives have to take note that not everybody believes in all of the things that we do. And we do have to build coalition and community. But the elite media narrative is slipping. And Donald Trump hastened that because the media he was like a sugar rush for them, right? The media just could not ignore his stupid orange face and his lean forward. And he's good at media. That's all he is. But it exposed the badness. And the media can't pretend that they weren't complicit, or I won't let them.
Alex, I want you to go tell your friends that owe you an apology, that was denying that Trump was a fascist or a racist. I think that this is going to sound crazy. The juxtaposition is going to sound crazy, but I think we should take MLK and his radicalism and beat people across the head with it. Okay, so the man of nonviolence, we should take his words and just bludgeon people with it, because we all accept it and celebrate him, but we don't want to actually incorporate his actual words. And here's some more of his words. Large segments of white society are more concerned about tranquility and the status quo than about justice and humanity. My spiel on this is MLK every day. That's my new hashtag, MLK every day. Or it's like we like to say in DC, MLK every day.
I have a thing, and Jocelyn, I'm talking also. Jocelyn should shut me up. But what I love about
How is that my job?
it's not. You just yell at me when you're making a point, or Brad can cut my mic. What I love about MLK and the radical side of the work we did. I don't know. You remember, Kymone, when I was part of a team that, just because Glenn Beck is actually a super important in the rise of fascism in America, and he came to the mall and he did a speech on the anniversary of the I Have a Dream speech. I'm trying to claim some of the mantle of MLK, and just a group of friends of mine, we raised $90,000 to build this beautiful art installation on the mall, and it had this 4 images of MLK on an artistic thing. So the angle that you were looking at it was a different picture. But what I really loved was we also played full MLK speeches from these 360 speakers, like really loud, just booming them down the mall, while all of these Glenn Beck's Fox people, who were proto-MAGA hat wearing people, were streaming in. So it was a beautiful thing. I loved doing that. But another thing I really always love with MLK is there's this thing, radicals, when they listen to MLK, are often like, man, I forgot how religious that guy was. And religious people or liberals are both like, man, I forgot how radical that guy was. And I think that there's something to be said about how the nexus there, that it was this true fundamental faith. It was not married with real pragmatic solidarity. That's the radicalism, right? So like that concept over the long arc of history is so important, because he's saying the spiritual well-being, however you understand that, is important, but you can't leave the fact that we live here and now. And so you can't, trade material destitution and oppression for a promise of something later when you die, right? Like that's not actually what we're going to do. We're going to use the power of spiritual understanding and values and faith, and marry it to making people's lives better in the here and now. And I feel like the left needs to sort of get back to understanding that particular form of power. Reverend Barber obviously is at the forefront of that right now, but saying whatever faith you believe in, but it's this strength that comes from saying, this is something bigger than my person.
I think that, again, MLK every day, when we heard them attacking Bernie Sanders and using socialism as a slur, as if it's a pejorative, if we was able to bludgeon them with the radical side of Martin Luther King, we could say, we are saying, this is King, we are saying that something is wrong with capitalism. There must be a better distribution of wealth, and maybe America must move toward a democratic socialism. They would never come out and say the same things that they said about Bernie, about MLK. And I think there's a pot of gold sitting here, and we should use this to take control of the narrative and justify what really needs to happen and how far we can go in restructuring this society. But if I may, I just want to make sure that we clear that white supremacy, what we saw on display in the Capitol, and we all know if I had went up in the Capitol like that with Black Lives Matter and anti-fascist activists, it would have been a completely different outcome. But having said that, I don't think the vast majority of people really understand what white supremacy is. White supremacy is not, a Trumper waving a flag and trying to run Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, campaign vehicle off the road, and I believe it was Texas or something. That's just a physical manifestation. White supremacy is an institution that's conducted simultaneously in all areas of people activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, war. It's all there. And let me paint a personal picture for you, because sometimes it's kind of insidious, because it's actually practiced by all people, not just white people. By all people. Colonialism is white supremacy. Apartheid is white supremacy. Jim Crow is white supremacy. But if you see a film and that film has a Latino cast, Latino director, Latino producers, you say that's a Latino film for Latino audience. If you see an Asian film with Asian actors, Asian director, Asian producers, you say that's an Asian film for Asian audiences. But when you see a white film, well, white directors, white producers, white everything, you don't say that's a white movie. You say that's a film for everybody. That's white supremacy. And that is what is ingrained in every aspect of American society, Western society. And that is why there's such an unwillingness to uproot it. And when I had the honor of interviewing Hugh Masekela, the great South African jazz artist, he said that his dying wish was the reclamation of heritage and culture. And instead of accepting this premise based upon white supremacy, Europe is not even a continent. That's white supremacy. Look at the map. There's no separation between Europe and Asia. We don't question that. Christopher Columbus discovered America. That's white supremacy. That you start saying that this person discovered this, even though people are already there. Why? Because he's a white European. And we have to separate our thinking, because it's polluting and tainting everything. And you saw the manifestation of that. And that is, I don't know if this is true, but I believe it to be true. So we might need to fact check this one. But Biden might be the first president to ever mention the words white supremacy in his inauguration speech.
I believe it is. I saw
that was huge.
Yeah, I saw a thread on Twitter by some journalists that noted that that's the first time that's been mentioned.
We should not kid ourselves. All the problems in America is traced to this. If America was a homogeneous nation, we wouldn't have half the problems.
But
if America looked like Norway, we would have more social programs.
We would have more social programs, but we wouldn't have. All I'm trying to say is our diversity is our strength. But the point you're making, Kymone, I don't want to minimize, which is that a lot of it's not like conservatism, or Trumpism is against social programs for them. They love social programs for them. They don't like social programs for people who don't look like them, for black and brown folks. And that's the actual root of that face of so-called conservatism or small government. It's enormous government for rich white people, right? They just take people's money and hand it right over to them. Like, here you go, sir. Here is your check.
Amazon doesn't pay taxes.
Yeah, just here you go. There's your check. But small government for black people, and accept huge government when it comes to the police force, right? Like, don't tread on me. What they really mean is go tread on other people, a boot on their neck. And that is white supremacy. White supremacy is also just by being born. The first time I get a credit rating, mine's higher than yours, Kymone, right? Now, you're a black man and I'm a white man, and
it's probably for more reasons than that. I would be.
No, that's now. I'm saying at the starting point. At the starting point, just by virtue of race alone, a person's credit rating is lower. A black man's credit rating starts lower than a white man's, or in the case of wrongful death or something like that in a lawsuit, when it comes to how much, so a company kills somebody and they're found, guilty of wrongful death, negligence. When it comes to how much money they owe, they use an actuarial formula, and a white person is worth more than a black person, than a brown person. And I mean, like, money, that's real. That's every day in courtrooms across this country. Actually, Trayon White, a council member from Ward 8, has a bill trying to get rid of that aspect for court cases in DC. That's white supremacy as well. I just wanted to throw out, like, the economic reality of white supremacy is very real and ingrained in the way business is conducted.
Absolutely. And again, MLK every day, he says that they have socialism for the rich and rugged capitalism for the poor.
Yeah, and I feel like we've gone, I'm gonna ask Jocelyn so then I can stop. I feel like we've gone past that. It's not rugged individualism anymore. It's like, when he was saying that, and the concept is true, but it's just full scale looting of the people to the rich. And then we don't even leave people alone anymore, is what I'm saying. It's not rugged individualism. It's literal boot on your face. You'll get nothing and like it. Authoritarianism for everyone else.
I'd like to ask Jocelyn a question.
Yes, of course.
Jocelyn, you're the youngest of the trio here today. And I'm the oldest of the trio here today. I remember vividly that during the Bush regime, that they sent $1 billion in cash on pallets into a war zone in Iraq, and the money turned up missing, and no one knows what happened to it. And in addition to all the other war crimes and the fact that it was there until over a line to begin with, and it was just, as Alex just said, looting Iraq. No one was held accountable. Obama said, we want to look forward, we're not going to look back. So no one was held accountable for that. And you go back further than that, the Nixon administration was pardoned by Gerald Ford. No one was held accountable for his crimes. I think a couple of people went to jail, but Nixon wasn't held accountable for his crimes. Reagan wasn't held accountable for Iran-Contra scandal and the fact that he committed treason when he did a deal to hold the hostages until he was released. This is the history. Now, going forward, my question to you, having seen all the things that Trump has done and is guilty of, do you think Biden is going to hold him accountable, or do you think he's going to look forward because we don't want to look back for the sake of America? It's in our best interest to move forward.
I mean, honestly, I think you're right. I think it's very likely that it's going to be a look forward and let's unify and all that ridiculous, because you're right, Kymone. I mean, when I was a kid for most of the Bush administration, but like, Bush was a war criminal. Everybody was talking about it. We were all marching in the streets of DC. And then all of a sudden Trump is in office and Michelle Obama is hugging him at baseball games. It's been the most surreal thing to watch. Like, it wasn't that long ago where we were talking about how George Bush was bombing children. And I don't want to, I mean, one hopes that's not going to happen again. But I think we are addicted to rehabilitating the images of war criminals because of what you're saying, Kymone, because white supremacy is everywhere. And at the end of the day, you ask most people if they're really as disturbed about innocent people in Iraq dying as they are by like a middle class white school getting shot up, and they're just not. Which, by the way, they're both tragedies. I'm not trying to minimize that. But yeah, I hope I'm wrong. I hope that we see Trump in prison. I really do. I think that's an important precedent to set. But I don't know. What do you think? Do you think it's going to happen?
You asking me? Mm-hmm. My answer to all those questions in terms of justice and fairness and accountability, I say this is America.
Yeah.
I understand that. I just take agency, and I don't hope that other people will do stuff. I actually think of the hat that I wore with the HIV organizing, and Obama with the hope and the ribbon, and then we didn't push, and that was us. We were like, I hope that he does the right thing. We didn't hope for anything under Bush. We were like, this dude is a war criminal, and we're going to do this stuff. And part of it was electoral, getting Bush in office, getting Bush out of office. But then we stopped, and I am promising, and I mean it, and I've got some means to do it now. Like, I carved Stephen Miller's name in my heart. I will not rest until I see him at The Hague. The man put children in cages. He kidnapped children from their families, and he put them in cages because of his sick Nazi ideology of racial superiority. I personally will get, if I can gather people to raise $90,000 to build an art installation just to say F you to Glenn Beck. No one will ever love you, Glenn Beck. I feel like and that was like a long time ago. I feel like we're better than that now. I feel like the three of us have to make a pact that America might not be able to do anything, but we can do a lot. And we have to fight. We have to fight against, it's a lethargic, it's an opioid sort of, it's a drug that America's addicted to. We like to pretend that everything is fine, right? So the moment we see the ability or an angle to be like, no, it's not as bad as that, or everything's fine, let's look forward, not back, we take it as a nation. But I feel like we can break people out of that lethargy, because that's what we have to do. We have to shake things up and just continue. So I don't trust or hope that anything good is going to happen. But I do believe, to be on brand here, and trust in solidarity, that when we work together, we can actually shout down the walls, and we can expose some of the criminality. And we definitely have to work on that media aspect, because the political revolution really can't go forward before there's a media revolution, because the propagandists, man, Fox News is going to pretend like they never had anything to do with creating Donald Trump. And we have to figure out a way to break that propaganda cannon. That's sort of, I think, one of the things that the three of us in particular need to dedicate ourselves to.
Well, I think that it goes back to location. We're here in the nation's capital, in a nerve center. We are strategically located, and I, for one, I'm in a good place, a good space. I have more time, because before, like everyone else, you're stuck in a survival mode and a rat race. Now that I have some freedom in my time, I want to figure out, how do we take advantage of us being strategically located and become like a people lobbying firm that goes to these offices, that bludgeons these people across the head with radical MLK everyday quotes, driving our points home and making sure that there's some sort of tribunal for what has happened, and that there's some progressive movement on what needs to happen. And I think that everything that was politically impossible is, in fact, politically inevitable. And it's just a matter of time. They're going to have to acquiesce to the demands of the people, because the crisis demands it. Can you imagine that like a half of the country is behind in their rent in some shape, form, or fashion, or mortgage? Can you imagine if they try to evict half the country? What would that look like? That is impossible. They can't incarcerate half the country. They can't evict half the country. But that's where we are right now. So they're going to have to address the fierce urgency of now.
Yeah, and I think, that gets me really excited, Kymone. The idea of a people lobbying firm that's just beating members of Congress over the head with radical MLK quotes. I love that so much. And it's like we always talk about when we talk, people really need to realize that we are united by these problems. These are not individual problems. You're not like individually behind on your rent. If half of the country is housing insecure, that says we need to do how we live in this country differently and face the true enemy, which is white supremacy, capitalism, a system which keeps people so materially insecure, so in survival mode that they can't organize. I know this hour went by so fast. Kymone, is there anything else you want to tell people before we sign off?
Oh wow! I just want to make sure that people know that that we're spiritual beings having a human experience. So we should get bogged down in the weight that we're dealing with in this life. We are on deck. That we are living in exciting times. This is an opportunity for us to change the course of history. It's very difficult to turn a battleship around, but that is our charge. I think every generation has a charge to do, and I think that is our charge. We're here to say that we're going to, in the words of Fannie Lou Hamer, we're going to make America work for everybody, because it's right now it's not working for nobody.
That's so true.
And
Thank you. Oh, what were you going to say, Alex?
Just you can find out, you can follow Kymone on Twitter, We Act Radio. You can find We Act Radio, weactradio.com. And again, I wanted to have you on, Kymone, because I thought this is a changing era. And we've been through a lot, built a lot together. And so thank you.
It'll be 10 years this year, Mr. Lawson.
I know, right? So thank you for giving us some of your wisdom and fire. And I look forward to continuing in the struggle in this next chapter with you, which I too believe can be great. With a great calamity comes great opportunity.
And as I was to Johnson's point, it ain't over. It's just begun. And let's be excited. Do something.
Kymone.
Thanks so much, you guys.
So Jocelyn, next time we have Kymone on, I think we could have like a same length discussion about the other aspect that we talk about a lot, which is the hollowness of the materialism of today.
Oh yeah.
And the fact that popular culture, is driving people to focus on, acquiring dumb stuff and right, like that coarsening is real and in service of the plutocrats, right? Like they don't want the people to have access to deep culturally relevant art. They want it to be very shallow all the time. So we got to have a whole nother conversation about that next time Kymone's on.
Well, I love everything he was saying, everything we were talking about, but especially the idea that, yes, if you repeat a song lyrics that you don't even like, what is that? That's the basis for popular media brainwashing. We get bombarded with narratives that we don't even agree with intellectually or emotionally, but they become the wallpaper of our inner worlds. And our behavior is dictated by that. And until we create a media cycle that isn't premised on white supremacy and this idea of the material dominance of colonial powers, until we find a different way and a different way to experience ourselves internally and externally, we're going to keep having the same type of political structures. So yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for being here this morning. I always love speaking with Kymone, and of course you, Alex, my favorite comrade. And we'll see you guys next week.